Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. It was supposed to be a joyous occasion, our 5th wedding anniversary. Sunlight flooded the dining room as I set the table with the fine china we'd saved for special events. My wife, Marianne, had been peculiarly enthusiastic about this evening, promising a surprise that would sweep me off my feet. Little did I know, her surprise would do just that, but not in the way I had ever expected. Marianne walked in, her smile radiant, holding a small, elegantly wrapped box. "Happy anniversary, love," she beamed, placing the box in my hands. Her excitement was palpable, almost infectious, as she watched eagerly for my reaction. Unwrapping the gift, I found a luxurious watch, its face gleaming under the chandelier's light. Engraved on the back were the words, "To my one and only." A warm rush of affection swept through me, until a cold jolt of recognition followed. I had seen this watch before. Not one like it, but this very one. "Marianne, this is exquisite, but isn't this the same watch you gave me 2 Christmases ago?" I asked, my voice steady despite the confusion swirling within. Her face paled, her smile faltering. "What? No, that can't be right," she stammered, her eyes darting away. Frustration and suspicion mounting, I retrieved the original watch from our bedroom and laid them side by side on the table. Identical. Down to the last detail, including the engraving. Why do you have 2 of these?" I pressed, needing answers she wasn't ready to provide. Marianne's facade crumbled, her usual composure dissolving into nervous tics. I must have made a mistake at the store," she muttered, but her tone was hollow, unconvincing. That night, after a tense dinner where we exchanged barely more than monosyllables, I lay in bed, the pieces clicking together. The late nights, the unexplained absences, the distant aroma of unfamiliar cologne that clung to her clothes. It wasn't a mistake. That watch wasn't meant for me, it was meant for someone else. Someone she called her one and only. The next day, fueled by a blend of betrayal and resolve, I started digging. Calls to her friends, checking bank statements, and a dive into her social media. Each piece of evidence was a hammer to the foundation of the life we had built together. It wasn't long before I found it, a love letter tucked away in her drawer, not addressed to me, but to someone named Alex. The reality of her double life sliced through the last threads of denial. My wife, the woman I had loved and trusted, had been leading a parallel existence, one where I was nothing more than a placeholder. The hurt was immense, eclipsing even the rage that bubbled beneath. In that moment of clarity, I made a vow, not just to confront her, but to ensure that the duplicity she had woven so carelessly would unravel entirely. I would take everything from her as she tried to take my dignity. Our divorce would be just the beginning of her unraveling. As dawn crept through the curtains, I set my plans into motion, each step calculated with the precision of a man with nothing left to lose. As the morning light spilled across the kitchen floor, I sat at the table surrounded by the fragments of Marianne's betrayal, credit card statements, whispered phone calls echoing from a recorder, and the damning letter scrawled with affection for another. My heart thrummed a rhythm of impending confrontation, the silence of our home amplifying the storm brewing within me. I heard the front door click, a sound that once signaled comfort, now a herald of deceit. Marianne stepped in, her face weary, eyes avoiding mine. She paused, sensing the cold shift in the atmosphere. "Good morning," she ventured, a tremble in her voice. I didn't move, my eyes fixed on the documents laid out like a jury before me. "Who is Alex?" I asked, my voice flat, cutting through the faint hum of the refrigerator. Her bag dropped to the floor, the sound sharp in the tense air. I don't know what you're." "Don't," I snapped, pushing the letter toward her. "I'm not blind, Marianne. Or stupid. Who is he?" She collapsed into a chair, her posture deflating as she buried her face in her hands. It's not what you think," she sobbed, her words muffled by her palms. "Isn't it?" I stood, anger rising. "Explain it to me. Make me understand how it's not exactly what I think." Marianne lifted her head, tears streaming down her face. "It was a mistake. I was lonely, you were always working, and he was there." Her voice broke as she grasped for excuses. "A mistake that lasted how long?" I demanded. My hands trembled with restrained fury, the air between us charged with bitter revelations. 6 months, she whispered, the confession hanging heavy in the room. 6 months. Half a year of lies and secrets. The pain carved deeper, hollowing out the space where trust once lived. And the watch. I pressed, needing to expose every shard of her treachery. I bought one for him first. I didn't mean to give you the same." Her voice trailed off, lost in her guilt. "That's enough," I said, my decision cemented by her admissions. "I want a divorce, Marianne." "No, please," she reached out, hands shaking. "We can fix this." "There's no we left to fix anything," I interrupted, stepping away from her reach. "You've made sure of that." I turned away, leaving her sobs behind as I went upstairs to gather the essentials, documents, clothes, the remnants of a life I thought I shared with someone faithful. Each step was heavy, each item a memory tainted by the stain of her betrayal. Downstairs, I could hear her pleading, her voice desperate and broken. But the time for words had passed. Action, cold and calculated, would be my only response. As I loaded my car, a sense of resolve settled over me. The pain was sharp, but it honed my resolve like steel. I would rebuild, away from the lies, away from Marianne. My phone buzzed with messages, friends, a lawyer, the beginnings of my new life calling. The drive away from what was once our home felt like breaking through the surface after being underwater for too long. The road stretched out before me, each mile a step towards a future unclouded by deceit. Marianne's betrayal would redefine me, but it would not define me. As the house disappeared in the rearview mirror, so too did the life I once knew, making way for the retribution that would shape my new reality. The chill of the lawyer's office was a stark contrast to the turmoil raging within me as I sat across from Mr. Clarkson, a seasoned attorney known for his ruthless efficiency in divorce cases. The room, lined with law books and certificates, seemed to echo the gravity of my situation. "Mr. Adams, I've reviewed the evidence you provided," Mr. Clarkson began, his voice even and precise. "It's quite substantial. We can file for an at-fault divorce citing infidelity, which will expedite the process and possibly favor you in the settlement." I nodded, my jaw set. "I want to ensure she doesn't walk away with half of everything I've earned. She forfeited that right when she decided to deceive me." "Understood. I'll draft the papers." "Have you considered arrangements for your joint assets and the house?" he inquired, his pen poised above the notepad. "The house can be sold." "I don't want anything that reminds me of her," I said firmly, the words feeling like shards of glass in my mouth. "And the financial accounts?" "Freeze them. She shouldn't have access to the funds anymore, not after what she's done," I added, my voice cold. Mr. Clarkson nodded, making notes. "I'll need your signatures on a few documents to initiate the proceedings and the asset freezes. She will be served by the end of the week." Leaving the office, I felt a grim satisfaction. The legal wheels were in motion, but that was only the beginning of my retribution. I knew Marianne thrived on her social image, her role as a charity board member, her presence at social events. That would be my next target. Later that week, I met with a few acquaintances from the local newspaper under the guise of discussing potential philanthropic projects. Casually, I steered the conversation towards marital fidelity and the impact of personal scandals on public perception. It wasn't long before the bait was taken. You know, it's the people you least expect, I mused aloud. Imagine the scandal if someone like Marianne was caught in an affair. Would make quite the story, wouldn't it? The seed planted, I left them mulling over the implications, knowing that journalists always followed the scent of a scandal. It was only a matter of time before Marianne's infidelity became the talk of the town. As the days passed, the strain took its toll on Marianne. She called repeatedly, left messages begging for a chance to explain, to mend things. I ignored every attempt. She needed to feel the isolation she had forced upon me with her actions. One evening, as I sat in my new apartment, the phone rang. It was Alex, Marianne's lover. His voice was shaky, tinged with fear. "Look, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I'm sorry you were hurt," he stammered. "Sorry doesn't change what you did," I replied curtly. "You're as guilty as she is. Both of you ruined everything." I know. I hope we can settle this without more damage," Alex pleaded. "This isn't about hope. It's about consequences," I snapped, hanging up. The next morning, Marianne's affair was front-page news. The article hinted at a prominent socialite caught in a sordid love triangle, her reputation unraveling as the community whispered and judged. Sitting back, I watched as the dominoes fell, each one a calculated step in her undoing. Marianne's world was crumbling, and as the architect of her downfall, I ensured I was there to witness each moment of her despair. The coffee shop was bustling with the mid-morning crowd as I sat in the back corner, a vantage point that offered a clear view of the entrance. My hands wrapped around a steaming mug, not for comfort but to steady my resolve for what was about to unfold. The door chimed, and Marianne walked in, a shadow of her former self. The relentless social backlash had taken its toll. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on me with a mixture of hope and despair. As she approached, I could see the lines of stress etched deeply into her face. "Michael, please, can we just talk?" Her voice was a whisper, a plea. I set my cup down, my gaze unwavering. "We are beyond talking, Marianne. This is about closure." She took the seat opposite me, clutching her purse like a lifeline. "I'm ruined, Michael. You've taken everything. Wasn't that enough?" I leaned forward, my voice low and controlled. "You took first, Marianne. You took our vows and trashed them with your deceit. This is simply the balance being restored." Her eyes filled with tears, her composure cracking. I never meant for any of this. It was a mistake. A mistake repeated is a choice, Marianne. And you chose him, again and again, I retorted sharply. Just then, the door chimed again, and Alex walked in, hesitantly looking from Marianne to me. His presence was no coincidence, I had orchestrated this meeting with precision. "Alex, join us," I said, my tone deceptively calm. He moved slowly, sitting next to Marianne, his discomfort palpable. "Why are we here, Michael?" Alex asked, his voice unsteady. "For clarity and consequences," I replied, pulling out a folder from my bag. I slid it across the table to them. Inside are the final divorce papers and a little surprise. Marianne opened the folder, her hands trembling. Among the legal documents was a set of photos, pictures of Alex with another woman, intimate, undeniable. "What is this?" Marianne gasped, her face draining of color as she turned to Alex. Alex's mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked from the photos to me, realization dawning. "I gave you both a chance to come clean months ago. Since you didn't, I hired a private investigator," I said, my words slicing through the thick tension. "You set me up." Alex stammered, his betrayal to Marianne now exposed. "Just as you set me up for humiliation by having an affair with my wife," I shot back. Marianne was sobbing now, her world collapsing anew. You were cheating on me too, Alex. It wasn't like that, Alex tried to explain, but Marianne pushed him away, standing abruptly. I can't do this anymore. I'm done with both of you, she cried out, her voice cracking as she stormed out of the coffee shop, leaving a stunned Alex behind. I watched her leave, a mix of satisfaction and emptiness battling within me. Alex sat frozen, a man betrayed by his own actions. This was your doing, Michael. Was it worth it? Alex asked, a note of sadness in his voice. Every action has its price, Alex. You're paying yours now, as she is, I said coldly, standing to leave. As I walked out into the crisp air, the weight of the past months felt both heavier and lighter on my shoulders. The game of deceit and revenge had ended, leaving behind a trail of destruction. I had won, if one could call it a victory, but the cost was etched deep into my soul. The final echo of my retribution resonated in the silent acknowledgement that while I had severed the ties that bound me to betrayal, I would never be free from its shadow.